What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here for the Fightful.com podcast, August 17th edition. This is a pretty big episode, you guys. Brought to you by DraftBeast.com and On It. Go to our podcast page, any of our podcast pages. Click on any of those podcasts and follow the On It link. Check out their great supplements, apparel, equipment, all that good stuff. I am joined by Showdown Joe. And Joe, we have no shortage of things to talk about tonight.
Yeah, man, what's going on, brother? It's these days like this where nothing happens in MMA, and it's been a slow week, and we got nothing to talk about. I don't know what you want to talk about.
Even outside of that, we have news in pro wrestling. I'm sure he's everybody's favorite Crow Cop nemesis, Alberto Del Rio, failed for a WWE wellness violation. Now, when they say wellness violation, that could mean a lot of things. That could mean he rejected the test. That could mean he couldn't produce a sample. Either way, WWE's not worried about performance-enhancing drugs. They're worried about their talents' hearts exploding at 35. Correct. Also, interestingly enough, his girlfriend, also a wrestler, failed a wellness violation as well. I'll talk about that later. Very interesting stuff that's going into that. One of them may be done with the company. We'll talk about that later. But we had quite the press conference today, Showdown Joe. I know that you didn't get to see it live. So I messaged you, and I was like, you have to watch this press conference. You have to see this press conference in which, man, Conor McGregor did what he needed to do. He showed up about 29 minutes late and was there for about 6 minutes and was done. I'll run down what exactly happened here. So McGregor's not there. He operates on MMA Standard Time. And, they're talking to Anthony Johnson, Glover Teixeira, Nate Diaz. Not a lot of noteworthy stuff outside of Dana White saying Conor McGregor is going to defend his title next or he's going to be stripped of it. Conor McGregor rolls in at, I think, I'll just say 29 past the hour, 29 minutes before or after the conference was scheduled to start. Almost immediately, Nate Diaz gets up and leaves. And there's a commotion that you can never mistake for anything outside of the Diaz brothers doing what they do. They start screaming, F your whole camp. And McGregor goes, no, F your whole camp. And they're flipping each other off and all this stuff. All of a sudden, Nate Diaz chucks a water bottle. He gets about 4 of them thrown back at him. But it doesn't end there. Not only does Conor McGregor throw a water bottle, he grabs Glover Teixeira's Monster Energy can and chucks it. Meanwhile, Dana White, in the most desperate voice I have ever heard him, pardon my language, guys, Conor, don't throw that fucking thing. Joe, your thoughts?
Well, when I got your text, I thought to myself, man, I've seen hundreds of UFC press conferences. I've been to, hundreds myself, and thought to myself, wow, wait a second. I got to do the math real quick in my head. It is Conor McGregor. It is Nate Diaz, and as most people know, I'm one of the biggest Diaz supporters ever. I love anything those guys do, not only in the octagon but outside of it. And I started thinking to myself, oh man, I got to watch this. Okay, Sean, I swear, as soon as I'm done here, I'll go home and check it out. And you basically said just the last 2 minutes is all you got to watch. And I said, well, no, I can't do that. I got to watch the whole thing. And truth be told, some silly questions were asked, and Diaz being Diaz, it was the last 2 minutes that were absolutely just majestic. They were fantastic. I mean, Conor shows up, and after I don't know what theory you subscribe to or what others subscribe to. I mean, do you agree with what Diaz did? Do you agree with what Conor did afterwards? Do you agree with Nate walking away? And it was just mayhem. And again, it just goes to show you that whenever the Diaz brothers are involved with anything, and or Conor McGregor with the way he trash talks, there's so much interest in this fight right now. I mean, Twitter probably blew up. I mean, it was insane, and I was trying to caught up, and watch I watched all the embedded episodes thus far, and I watched that CM Punk documentary. It was an all MMA night for me, and it was just a fantastic night. Now I get to spend it with you and the viewers right now. I'm actually stoked, man. I should be going to bed soon, but I'm stoked right now.
I heard people, Dave Meltzer specifically said, this one doesn't seem like it's trending the same way, but he also always says, the buys come in the last week. The buys from the casual viewers come in the last week. Well, they got the casual viewers tonight. They absolutely did. This is just unbelievable. By the way, guys, on Fightful.com, we have all the media from UFC 202 week, from the embedded episodes to Neil Magny's Fightography. We're going to have that up. We're going to have the weigh-ins. We're going to have everything. Anything that you'll need, you'll be able to find at Fightful.com. Also, you guys can go there, register an absolutely free account. You'll get access to Showdown Joe's columns every week, 3 Vince Russo columns every week. You'll get early access to the Vince Russo podcast that drops on Thursday afternoons, our exclusive financial analysis from Brandon Howard, all kinds of great stuff. Wikipedia True or False, our exclusive interviews. We had a pretty new one up with Chael Sonnen. Unfortunate news regarding his family, which we'll get into, but that's also great. Absolutely free. It'll never cost you a dime. You get access to our forums, which we are overhauling. Lots of cool stuff. Our Monday Night Raw podcast did 21,000 downloads. Unbelievable. Also, we have live viewing parties for everything this weekend. So come check that out. Join in on the fun. Talk to people. We got podcasts all weekend as well. Joe, this is like, this press conference essentially served as like the last Monday Night Raw before a wrestling pay-per-view, right? Yeah. So imagine John Cena and The Rock. One's in the ring, one's on the ramp, and they're chucking Dasani at each other. Just throwing Aquafina water bottles at each other. That would seem kind of ridiculous, kind of stupid. It did not seem ridiculous or stupid when Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor did it. I wanted more. The desperation that we heard in Dana White's voice, it was something I have never heard before.
I don't know what was going on with Dana White. I mean, there's obviously, that guy there goes through quite a bit other than just what's happening on Fight Week. There's so many different things that he has to deal with, when you're at the
like
top
swimming
there.
Around in his Scrooge McDuck pool of gold coins.
Pretty much, yeah. I guess you could say that. But he's always got decisions to make. He's always got bad news, being texted to his phone and staff telling him this happened, or what's happening with this pay-per-view. And there's always something going on. I know that like he mentioned it in the conference that, they had that room only for a certain time. So, he's thinking, man, where's Conor McGregor? What's going on here? Why is he late? Why he's been in Vegas this whole time. Why is, he's on route. So where is he? We're running out of time here. And then he shows up and finally, okay, now, Dana was already in a sour mood when that press conference started. And then that happens and he's just like, I'm done. Like, this is ridiculous, man. When in reality, it's, I'm not saying it's the best thing that could happen. It's one of the best things that could happen for a pre-fight press conference. I mean, because everyone is going to grab this. SportsCenter is going to show this. It's all over social media. All kinds of hype already with this rematch. And there's other things that continue if it's not getting people involved. It's reminding them that on Saturday night, these two will have to settle their differences and their score again inside the octagon. So it's I mean, again, I don't know what's going through Dana White's mind, but if I'm the promoter and didn't have all other stuff to worry about, this is fantastic. Thank you, Conor McGregor. Thank you, Nate Diaz. Oh, my God, what can you do tomorrow? What can you do at weigh-ins? There's still so much more to do to hype up this main event.
They have said, Dana White has said that the last pay-per-view, 196, broke the pay-per-view record, which we can't confirm. The reports were 1.5 million. The record is 1.6. Do you think this beats out 196, and do you think it breaks the record of UFC 100?
I don't know. It's tough to say. Because I generally, I've got the strangest way of gauging a pay-per-view, and it's just with people who stop me in the street or wherever I'm at. If they're talking about a fight, and I'm talking about not people like yourself and myself that we watch these things all the time, just a general casual viewer, the guy that I'm standing in line at the gas station to pay for my gas, or if I'm at the grocery store or my son's soccer game, the casual dude or the casual lady that just says, you know what, hey, I heard about this Conor McGregor guy. Oh, I can't wait to see this fight, or they engage in a conversation. I really haven't had that much regarding that, so I don't know per se, but I wouldn't be surprised if this does smash the record. I mean, there's a lot of hype. There's from what I'm seeing online and some of the discussions I'm getting from, not just the hardcore fans, but the amount of people that I'm interacting with generally gives me a sort of a gauge as to how popular something's going to be, and there has been a fair amount. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen. Who knows, Sean? Maybe by tomorrow or by Friday, people will start talking about it big time in my area around here, but not as much as, for example, UFC 100 or other big fights in the past.
We had two guys throwing water bottles at each other. This was the equivalent of a middle school lunchroom disagreement. And I think it probably just added 100,000 buys. Isn't that crazy to think?
No, not at all. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, though, because what ends up happening, like I said, is, news outlets, mainstream sports news outlets are looking for this type of content that is different from the everyday, Yankees versus Red Sox, or Blue Jays versus the Orioles, or, whatever. Someone from the Buffalo Bills gets caught for something or gets injured. Just the regular, mundane, same news stories all the time. This is something different. This could lead off, the first segment, for a sports center. People are going to talk about this. It'll hit different shows as well. It might make it to late night TV again. Jimmy Kimmel might be talking about this. This is the kind of stuff that generates awareness and generates hype. So, it's as crazy as it sounds, as middle school as it sounds, it's actually good for the pay-per-view number, I think.
I'm going to pull up some of the highlights from this show. Or not from this show, from the press conference. It's by the way, Dana White said that they are not going to wait and see what happens with Jon Jones, which is another thing we'll be talking about shortly. Rumble Johnson or Glover Teixeira, based on how that fight goes, which I like that he says, I'm going to see how this fight goes, because if that fight's a stinker, which it probably won't be, he doesn't want to give the winner a title shot, obviously. But that's one of the things that came out of it. When asked about a fighters union, Dana White said, "Whatever, I don't know anything about it." Joe, I get the feeling that he does know something about it.
He knows everything about it. Believe you me.
He knows things about it that the people involved don't know about it. Exactly.
I mean, you got to get that legal team more than ready to deal with this kind of stuff here. It's easy just to deflect that very, very quickly, and that's just basically. When you're being interviewed for certain things, you can deflect any way you want, because again, there's only so much a journalist or reporter will follow up with, and there's only so much time to talk about something. For example, if you only have 5 minutes to interview someone, and you ask them a specific question, if they're good, they can deflect with an answer that they won't even be answering your question. So by Dana saying that, he just quickly deflected off to the side. Believe me, he knows what's going on. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is something that they've been, dealing with for a very long time, and there's other associations now that are potentially coming up to put together a union. They're fully aware of what's going on, and it's not that he needs to be coached on what to say if that question comes up. But someone could have said, "Look, if it does get asked, say this," or it's not his first rodeo. If he gets asked that question, he knows what to say.
Speaking of that fighters union, Leslie Smith was one of the people that spoke on behalf of starting a fighters union and revealed that she had a tumor on her stomach that she couldn't afford to get fixed. The UFC stepped up to fix it. Do you think that was out of the goodness of their heart, or a way to say, hey, maybe just shut the hell up about this union thing, or a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, there are medical things that they're covered for. I don't know that tumors are part of the part of the medical stuff that they are covered for. So
she said it wasn't, at least.
I'll take her word for it. I got no problem believing her. So I mean, good on the UFC for doing that. And again, it is one of those things that looks good. Should something ever go to court? Hey, look at what we did. What we do help out our fighters. So they're playing the cat and mouse game. They're being smart about it, and it's horrible news for her. Hopefully she everything gets taken care of and she's better and stuff like that. But from the UFC's perspective, it is a game. So it is A, out of the goodness of their heart, but B, yeah, very strategic.
Also, unfortunate news. Chael Sonnen's daughter was born well over 2 months premature. He had told me that she does have a fight on her hands. She unfortunately passed away today. That's terrible news. We want to extend our condolences to the Sonnen family, Chael, Brittany, as well as their son. That's a real bummer, Joe.
Big time, yeah. I mean, when I got the news, I actually saw it online from Front Row Brian, and I had to pause for a second because I was in the middle of just tweeting out some stuff about Diaz and McGregor and our podcast and stuff like that. And I just stopped and I just said, let me just retweet this real quick and then send off a message to Chael. And then I just, I said on behalf of my family, we're thinking about, there's nothing, what can I say? What do you say to something like that? So on behalf of my family, we're thinking of them and, praying for them and Godspeed. But, and I don't expect Chael to message back at all. But at the same time, it's I mean, anyone that's out there that's a parent knows your brain just stops. You're just like, what? So Godspeed to the Sonnen family, and what do we say?
Real tragedy. We also had some more news this week. Jon Jones made it sound like he is not, I don't want to say off the hook, but it seems like he found a hole, a gap, something. He had said, I'll pull up the exact quote that way I don't get it wrong again, but by all means, and Dana White reiterated it, mind you, it's things are apparently looking good for Jon Jones. Jon Jones said, I'm sure you guys are curious about this USADA situation. Obviously, I can't get into it because it's still pending, but what I can say is we found out lots of really good news, and I'm expecting to be in the octagon very soon. That's a shocker. And then Dana White, the next day, was asked about it on Jim Rome's show, and he says, I don't even know if this is public. I don't know if I can talk about it. Normally, I talk about anything, but when it comes to medical stuff, you can't do it. It looks like Jon Jones did not take the supplement everyone thought he took. He said it's in other things. If that's true, that's what USADA and the Nevada State Athletic Commission says happened, it could look good for Jon Jones. Now, we'll address this first. What's your reaction to something like that, Joe?
I'll be honest with you, Sean. I'm not sure if I buy it. I don't. They always say when it comes to drug testing, the cheaters are way ahead of the testers. Maybe you didn't take the exact. I'm not accusing Jon of anything. I'm just running through my head because of what happened. The fact that he was the UFC 200 main event, and it all messes up. And now next thing you know, there was a mistake or this, or that. Well, I don't know. I mean, who's to say that there wasn't a situation where it's like, well, don't take that. But if you take that, we can say you took that, and not knowing that that's what happens when you take that drug that, kind of weans you off steroids or weans you off some sort of performance-enhancing drug. So, but then again, maybe it's the truth. Maybe Jon realized, maybe the emotion was real, and he said, you know what, like, what's going on here? Like, why is this happening to me? This is the worst day of my life, and all that stuff there. And then, maybe they did find something, or they did realize, what a coincidence sort of thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore when it comes to all this drug tests and performance-enhancing drugs. And, and because it's Jon Jones and he has this history behind him of just always getting himself into trouble, you kind of think twice when he comes out with that Instagram message and that video. And it's just kind of like, what do I believe in? But then again, he's a human. He could be telling the truth, and you got to sometimes give the guy the benefit of the doubt. I'm just torn. I'm mixed. I don't know what to think, and I don't know if I should buy it at all, but nowadays, who knows? It's just crazy. But if USADA screwed up, then what's the ramifications on them? How do you penalize them for screwing this up?
It'll be nothing. It'll be nothing. It never is. It never is. And we'll get into that momentarily. But to play devil's advocate, as Chael Sonnen has said before, usually when Jon Jones is guilty, he literally runs and hides under a ring, away from a scene of a wreck. He runs and hides. He did not run and hide from this. He took it head on, but it's very interesting. Also, something very interesting, a guy by the name of Brock Lesnar tested positive for the same substance. What does that mean for him? Does that mean maybe the same thing happened, quote unquote, with him? You don't know. I mean, Lesnar is a guy who has been tested throughout, whether it be WWE, NFL, UFC in the past, but UFC tests, back in the day, those pre-fight tests, very easy to pass. They're coming. If you fail a drug test that is coming, well, you're kind of dumb. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Also,
I remember
as
Brock's
you mentioned,
quote. Brock specifically said, "We're going to get to the bottom of this."
Yeah, and this is a guy by that point, he probably knew he wasn't facing any WWE ramifications because he's not. So, I mean, if he never planned on fighting again and didn't really care, I mean, he could have just been like, yeah, well, tough shit. But I don't know. I'm very interested to see what this means for them. Now, for Jon Jones, this could be the difference between a 24-month suspension and a 6-month suspension. Because usually if they do have something like that in their system, they go ahead and suspend them for 6 months. Originally, I thought it was, them USADA not really wanting to admit guilt as much, but I think it's more so that substance is out of this fighter's system. That way they no longer benefit from him, even if they were unintentionally ingested. And now, Joe, this has happened with Yoel Romero and Tim Means in the past. And both of these guys were pulled from the rankings, from fights, possible fights, scheduled fights, missed time. But USADA doesn't really admit any wrongdoing, and USADA is not perfect by any means, not perfect. Don't you think they need to maybe own up a little bit? We know that the Nevada State Athletic Commission has had a real problem with that in the past.
Well, yeah, that's the oldest argument probably in combat sports when you deal with these commissions and some of these drug testing organizations. They'll never own up to it, and for argument's sake, again, Jon Jones is innocent. If he's innocent, man, you just cost me the main event for UFC 200, millions. I've already got millions of dollars, but more millions that I deserve because this is what I do for a living. My window of earning this income is this big, and you took it away from me. You're taking me out of my prime. Yeah, I've got myself in trouble before, but not because of you. You did this to me. This is crazy. They should be able to own up to. You can't go back and be the main event for UFC 200 now. And then his reputation again is tarnished. It's got guys like me that have known Jon for years, thinking, man, well, maybe he did do it, right? Or thinking to myself, well, maybe he's finally turned the corner. Well, no, he didn't. He got caught. Well, he didn't get caught. But what happened with the test? It's confusing. So if I'm Jon Jones and I'm innocent, I don't know if I'd be crying. I'd be crying because I was upset at that press conference, but I'd be pissed, man. I'd be so mad right now.
And, we've seen it all happen. The DUI, the cocaine test, the hit and run, what else? The failed drug test most recently, and then, him going to jail for the drag racing thing, which, I believe Jon Jones in that situation. I think that because I know people in Albuquerque who know situations similar to that, and obviously Jon Jones is a known guy in Albuquerque, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know if he even legally can sue USADA or the Athletic Commission. I don't know if that's a thing he can do. I don't know if maybe they sign away their rights to do that as a part of this testing program. I'm not sure. But if I'm him, I would want to sue the living shit out of these guys if they cost me $10 million.
That's a really good point. If I'm legal representation for any Ultimate Fighter or a member of the UFC or anyone that's going to get tested, that's a good point. If they have to sign away the right to sue, oh man, you better get your lawyer involved and get those terms removed from that, because if USADA or whomever, WADA or anybody, VADA, if they do something like that to cost me that kind of money and tarnish my reputation, you're damn right I'm taking you to court. You're damn right I'm doing something, because there's no way you're getting away with that screw up. That's crazy.
Really, really just – I didn't expect to hear that. And, the Jon Jones news. But I'm intrigued. I'm interested. I'm also interested in Nick Diaz apparently never wanting to fight again in his entire life. A USADA agent came to his hotel. Of course, he was in room 209. Of course, he would be in room 209. And Nick Diaz had not slept all night and told the USADA agent, come back in 5 or 6 hours. She replies, Nick, it does not work like that. Let us in. Apparently, he did let her in. He did get tested. I want to know what you think happened. My theory is that maybe he doesn't understand the USADA rules and obviously had been smoking weed. It was on his Snapchat. You can't fail for that out of competition. So they're not vice cops. They don't care. But what did you think of this entire situation?
I'm sorry, man. Nick Diaz is the greatest ever. He is an absolute legend. Kai, him and his brother are absolutely awesome. They operate, more Nick though, but they operate on a completely different frequency than the vast majority of society that has certain rules. There's order to prevent chaos. There's just, these are the rules. This is how you have to abide by it. There's no rules for the Diaz brothers. They do what they want, when they want, how they want. And if I'm tired, you're coming back in 5 or 6 hours. It doesn't work that way. It's just legendary stuff. The guy's an absolute. I mean, I know there's haters out there, the Diaz brothers, and they're thugs and they're dummies, and they have to play by the rules.
One of those guys. I used to be one of those guys until I made money off of the things that they do.
Yeah, right. So I mean, and maybe it's a subliminal greed that's inside me that says anytime Nick Diaz is going to step up to a microphone or do some sort of conference call, or Nate Diaz, that it's just going to be epic. And I want it to be epic because again, they don't operate on the frequency that most politically correct or rule followers follow. I mean, they don't. They do what they want to do whenever they want to do, and despite him probably knowing, and there's we can make the argument he was probably high, and it's like, yeah, you need to get out of here, man. I'm tired. I want to go. I just smoked this thing because I'm going to bed. I want to go to sleep. Come back later. It's just, you can't. When they show up, whether you're having dinner with your wife, your girl, your boys at a restaurant, you're going to the bathroom with a Dixie cup or something and put out your forearm. There's a needle going in your forearm. That's just how it works. So I just love Nick Diaz. The guy's the best, man. He's just crazy.
I have people in the comment area asking when the show will be on iTunes. We're hoping soon. We're still finishing up the actual site. We have revamped forums coming soon, all kinds of stuff. It is available for direct download, though. If you go to the podcast page about 45 minutes to an hour after we wrap live, I have it up for direct download and an audio stream as well. So, yeah, that is an option. Also, you can subscribe to our RSS feed, which I think that I've fixed. I'm not that experienced with RSS feeds, because I'm a human being and I just download things like humans do. A couple other news things. Well, Demetrius Johnson he just runs 125. So what they're doing is they're just making all of his fallen challengers beat each other up. We got Cejudo and Benavidez. They announced Horiguchi versus Bagatinov. I don't know about you, Joe. I think Horiguchi's going to take Bagatinov to school. This happens at UFC Fight Night 97 in October.
In the Philippines. And I don't know. I mean, what do we think now of Ali Bagatinov? I mean, we all know that, I'm not speaking of PD usage, right? So, there's another guy that's been, so he's no longer, able to take that stuff. How is he going to perform? And we love the Gooch. The Gooch is a good kid and, does his thing, and we'll see what happens. But it's in the Philippines, and, forget that for a second. What drove me crazy was when I found out the news that the Bisping Henderson fight is happening at 3 a.m. Eastern.
Oh, no. 3 a.m. local time in England. No, not Eastern.
Do we have English viewers that watch us right now?
Yeah, we do. We have a lot, actually.
Sorry, guys. I love you, but whew. Sorry. Hey, listen, man. I've been in Europe when I went to go visit my old man in Italy and had to watch when Lesnar fought Overeem, I think, who was it, Glover, against OSP, and man, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, just sitting on the couch, UFC Fight Pass. Like, do I go to sleep? Do I not go to sleep? Do I sleep? Do I wake up and watch it? And just pulling an all-nighter. I feel for the fans overseas, but now that I'm back home and now that you just calmed me down, Sean, thank you very much. But again, I apologize to all our fans overseas, but I'm kind of glad that that's not 3 a.m. Eastern, because that would suck.
Fun-looking card, too. Bisping Henderson, Belfort Musashi, St. Preux Manawa, Magomedov Struve, just to get started. Just to get started. So lots of fun stuff there. Jermaine Nabrandamy pulled out of her fight. Maybe she's going cyborg hunting. I think she's going cyborg hunting, and she's a little busy. So there's that. A programming note, guys. I got to update you all on this stuff. After UFC 202, myself and Joe are coming at you with a live podcast. We're going to talk UFC 202 for about 45, 50 minutes. Then I'll be joined by Alex Palowski, who will talk that night's NXT show as well. So you're going to get a supersized edition of the podcast. August 27th, that would be next Saturday. We will not have our customary post-fight show. Are you going to be out of town that night too?
The 6th?
Or the 27th. I know that there was a night I looked at and I realized we would both be out of town. I've got a color commentary gig. I know you have another one soon too in September, right?
Yeah, I do have. I've got Titan FC 41, but that is the 9th of September. If you're talking the 27th, this guy will be around. I should be around. We'll see. I mean, we'll figure it out for our viewers.
I'll be in Northern Kentucky calling fights for Absolute Action MMA. If you guys are around, come say hi to me. Come visit on the campus of Northern Kentucky University. Lots of UFC, Bellator fighters ended up coming from Absolute Action MMA. Also, our post-fight show for Arlovsky versus Barnett. We'll have to figure out something for that because I get married that weekend. So,
oh boy, look out.
But of course, we're still going to bring you the podcast, of course, because we got contracts. We have to. Or we're in breach.
Oh, yeah, we signed on the dotted line, didn't we? Forgot about that.
We did. Something I'm very excited to talk to you about. The CM Punk documentary. I loved it. The first episode, rather. What'd you think?
Hey, man, that's the kind of stuff, Sean, that I used to love putting together when I was over at Sportsnet. That kind of documentary, the emotional, the voiceovers, just the storytelling, the right music for the right scenes, the good editing and stuff like that. Letting just it's fantastic stuff. So far, so good. You're sort of pulling, for Phil Brooks right now. You're really kind of hoping that he does do well. Win or lose. For myself, I don't care whether he win or loses. I just hope he looks good and puts on a great fight. I mean, based on the footage that we saw there, he doesn't look too good. He doesn't look like he's technically ready to compete. But that was a while ago, and who knows how he's going to look when he steps into the octagon. But I just love the fact. I love the whole straight edge theory that he abides by, that he completely believes in. I like the fact that who are we to say that he can't do it, or who are you to say that he can't do it? He's been given the opportunity. I remember the arguments back in the day about, who is this guy? He's taking my spot on the roster. There's other people that have been competing for years. Totally agree with that, 100%. Technically he doesn't deserve it, but the guy sells pay-per-views, and that's technically the name of the game, right? And that's why he got called, or he was, that deal was done with the UFC. He's going to sell pay-per-view. He's going to raise awareness. He's going to bring a large fan base over to watch the UFC and watch him compete. And realistically, guys, that's the name of the game.
It's like, I always hear people say, well, he's taking my spot. He doesn't deserve it. Do this. He doesn't do that. And I'm like, man, where were you when like half of this Tough China cast existed? Like, where were you then? Like, a bunch of people. There was a guy that made it on, I think, their opening fights that had never sparred before. Was that? I think I remember that. Now, there were also, I come from both worlds, MMA and pro wrestling, and I saw a pro wrestling guy, and I don't want to name him because I don't really care about him that much, but he was like trashing CM Punk for getting coached by Anthony Pettis for cage wrestling. Like, oh, Anthony Pettis teaching somebody cage wrestling. And I'm like, yeah, a former UFC world champion teaching a guy who knows nothing about cage wrestling some cage wrestling. Yeah, that's not ridiculous. Now, sure, if it's Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis, maybe a different guy, but I am not above learning from anybody. If my fiance and I go train tomorrow, and she rarely trains, and she's like, well, I happened to see this online or something, and she showed me and I learned something from it. Awesome. You can never be above learning from anybody, especially a UFC world champion. So I thought that was a stupid. Also, I got the wrestling fans that were like, well, he got his ass kicked in that smoker. Well, as Duke Rufus said, he didn't feel that comfortable putting him in a smoker that early to begin with. And he fought a guy who was 4-0 as a professional MMA fighter at the time, now has like 6 or 7 fights. And he personally, I thought that he didn't do any better or worse than I would have expected him 7 weeks in. So, I mean, it's 7 weeks in. And Joe, I said it last night on the show, a couple of weeks ago, I started to go back to wrestling practice. I started to have the itch again. And going there, I didn't realize how much more I knew than people that didn't train. And I didn't realize how much less I knew than people who did train all the time. And CM Punk is having a lot of those days. He's going to have a lot of those days. But you can tell he's kind of almost annoyed by the fame that he has experienced. Like, it's the type of thing that he wanted, but he got it, and he can't back out now. It's a little too late. He's been on TV in front of millions of people. I'm interested. This show kicks ass. I wish they would do it for more people. Now, granted, I know it's a special situation. What kind of people do you think that they could really do this thing for that could benefit from it like this, who have the personality to make it work?
We can probably start off in Stockton, California.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I mean,
if they show up to the taping.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, one of the reasons why I never flew down is we knew the risk that if we decided to fly across the continent to try and meet up with Nick and try and meet up with Nate in Stockton, there was a very good chance it wasn't going to happen. I know other people that we consider our peers that have gone there and booked their flight and were there for 3 days and didn't get to see Nick or Nate until probably 2 hours before they had to go to the airport and go home, chasing them down for 2 or 3 days. So that is something that happens when you think about it. But the Diaz brothers, you just never know. And I know people that are very close to them, or we're not very close to them, close enough to them that were like, it's a risk, man. Don't do it. But that'd be great. I'd like to see it with, I think Sarah McMahon would have been fantastic in my opinion. Former Olympian and a mom and stuff like that. The whole thing
she went through.
Kat Zingano. I mean, that would have been a fantastic documentary right there. But the list, I mean, is incredible. You can go up and down so many.
Rose Namajunas is doing it herself now. She's got her own vlog that she's going to start now, and that's another one who's got an interesting background and an interesting personality.
Well, 3 years
also,
ago,
I want to say,
3 years ago, the whole UFC roster, they all got video cameras from Dana White. This is when Dana White's vlogs were huge. So he, for the whole UFC roster, they all got cameras, and he basically said, do what I do, generate interest. And I probably count on one hand the people that actually did it.
How funny is it that by all means, Nate Diaz is the most responsible person in his camp as it pertains to the big stars? Jake Shields, Gilbert Melendez, Nick Diaz. Nate Diaz is now the most responsible, successful one. Never failed a drug test. He's making so much money. He's making so much money.
That's the greatest point ever. That's I never thought of that. That's incredible.
I mean, Shields failed. Melendez failed a drug test. Nick Diaz has felt like 100 of them. Meanwhile, Nate Diaz this year will make more than maybe all three of them combined have in the last 2 or 3 years, which is pretty crazy. That's pretty nuts because Nate Diaz is not Nick Diaz's little brother anymore. Nick Diaz is Nate Diaz's big brother. That's how it is. And I'll never forget after that Michael Johnson fight when he took to the mic and he said, "You're taking everything that I worked for." And I'm like, dude, you haven't fought in a year. And I'm thinking, like, what did he take? But he believed it. It didn't matter if I believed it. He believed it. And that's what mattered. And he got the fight. And now everybody believes it. So you can't write anybody off. I've done a 180 on Nate Diaz. The man is, well, he and Nick are both smarter than anybody will ever give them credit for. It's just
behind that theory, Sean, because I spent 45 minutes on camera with both of them, one at the Mandalay Bay and one at the MGM, and I can tell you with 100% conviction that these two guys are two of the smartest guys that I've ever come across in this industry as professional fighters, whether it comes to training and nutrition philosophies and stuff like that. What you may see or what the general public may see is who they are, but also if you sit them down and get them to chillax, relax a little bit, and actually get into a conversation, coolest cats you'll ever meet and smart, man. Don't ever try and talk to Nick Diaz about nutrition. He will rip your head off. That guy knows more than you can ever possibly imagine. The whole triathlon thing, the whole getting the body ready, when to do it.
Dumb triathletes.
Right?
Yeah. We're going to have a little bit of fun before we get into UFC 202 predictions, Joe. I have taken a poll among our staff members. I'm going to have you predict the winners of NXT TakeOver Back to Brooklyn and WWE SummerSlam, even though you have no clue who these people are. And there are quite a few, Joe. Actually, you know a few of these people. You do know a few of these people.
My internet's going down. There's something wrong. Can you see me still? My internet seems to be going down. What's happening?
Here we go. Ember Moon versus Billie Kay. Who's going to win?
Who was the first person you said?
Ember Moon.
I'm going Ember Moon.
You picked right. She's going to win.
All right.
No Way Jose versus Austin Aries.
No Way Jose.
The Revival versus Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa.
The last name you just said there's awesome. I'm going with them. Him.
So.
Her. It.
And Andrade Almas versus Bobby Roode.
Any relation to Rick Rude?
No, but they look kind of similar. Bobby Roode's Canadian.
It's right there. Bobby Roode.
I'm pretty sure he's a buddy of Jimmy Vans as well. Asuka versus Bayley.
Well, seeing as I love Bayley's in my coffee, you got to go Bayley.
She's going to be a big star. You will know who she is. She's going to be the female John Cena. That girl. Like in pro wrestling, it's nothing if I see kids cry. But when I see their parents cry because their kid got to meet that person, that's something. Now, you might know this guy, Shinsuke Nakamura. You know him?
Name sounds familiar.
He fought a little bit. Let me look back where he fought. He's a big Inoki guy. He fought in K1, fought in Jungle Fight, 3-1 and with a no contest. He lost to Daniel Gracie at one of the New Year's Eve shows, 2002, the Inoki show. So got an MMA background. He is going to fight or face Samoa Joe. Who you got?
I'll go with Nakamura.
He's a superstar. He really is. The way I would like to explain this guy to you, Joe, is if Michael Jackson and Anderson Silva had an Asian child, it would be Shinsuke Nakamura. Yeah, he's special. Now we're going to go to the WWE SummerSlam. We only have 11 more of these to go, Joe.
I'm cool. I'm sweating over here because I know that there's wrestling fans that are watching right now. I'm making an absolute mockery of something that they just love.
I'm being honest. You're doing pretty good right now based on my predictions. So that should say something about the predictability of pro wrestling. It really should. Jesus, my phone's going crazy. Alex Pawlowski, stop blowing my phone up if you're watching the podcast. We have The Miz of MTV fame against Apollo Crews.
You just reminded me of a cool story. I'll go with The Miz.
What's the cool story? Do you know The Miz?
No. About your phone blowing up. When I used to do the radio show, syndicated across Canada, nationally, live on the air, major market like Toronto, and and my phone would just keep going off and off and off. And I had it on silent, and it was the same 2 or 3 people for 7 years that would call me Thursdays between 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. And it didn't matter how many times I told them, I'm live on the air on a massive mainstream radio station, right? Yeah. Why are you calling me? I have to ask you a question. What are we doing on Saturday night?
My mother calls me at like 9 p.m. on a Monday every week. Now, keep in mind, Monday Night Raw has been on the air since 1993. And I have worked that show for like the last 4 or 5 years. Every week, I get that phone call between 8 and 9. It's ridiculous. Enzo Amore and Big Cass against Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. You got another couple of Canadians here in Jericho and Owens.
Wow, I've got to go pick either Canadians or someone from the old country. Enzo Amore. Wow. Been on a TV show with Jericho before. I'll show him some love. I'll show him in his I'll go with Jericho winning the tag team match.
Enzo Amore would fit in great cutting MMA promos too. Cesaro versus Sheamus in a match that I'm sure you are excited for.
I'll go with Sheamus. As bright as he is, but Sheamus is good. That skin, yeah.
Do you know who he is? Do you know who Sheamus is?
Isn't he the guy with the red hair and white skin, or am I completely out?
He sure as hell is.
There you go. All right, I know a bit here.
Carmella, Becky Lynch, and Naomi against Natalya, Eva Marie, and Alexa Bliss. You have another Canadian here, and Natalya, a member of the Hart Wrestling family.
Oh, right there. That's my pick right there. Oh, yeah. Guaranteed.
Jim Neidhart's kid.
Oh, no way. I met Jim Neidhart about a year ago.
Yeah. Quite the wrestling family. She's a better wrestler than he is, in my opinion. Sasha Banks, the cousin of Snoop Dogg, real-life cousin of Snoop Dogg, against Charlotte, the daughter of Ric Flair.
Oh, Ric Flair, greatest of all time. Charlotte, done.
You're going to be disappointed.
No.
We have the Bulgarian Brute, Rusev, against Roman Reigns for the United States Championship.
Wasn't Roman Reigns that guy that got in a lot of trouble and now he's back sort of thing?
Sure is.
Roman Reigns.
Took Adderall. Took some Adderall, apparently.
Ooh. I'll go with Roman Reigns. You're writing these down.
Also. Oh, of course I am. I'm adding them to our prediction sheet this weekend.
So I look like a dummy when it goes up there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, you won't look like that much of a dummy. I've seen some of the other staff picks. The New Day against Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows.
The heck, the New Day?
The New Day. Oh, they're great. They're great.
I'll go.
They come out and they play like trombones and stuff. They're pretty good.
Do they really? That's awesome.
Yeah. They named it Francesca.
That's disturbing, but okay. I'll go with the New Day still.
Looking to extend their title reign to a year. We have Dean Ambrose against Dolph Ziggler. I don't know how much you follow amateur wrestling, but Dolph Ziggler, his real name's Nick Nemeth, one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of Kent State, held their pins record for quite some time.
But this is professional wrestling. Who's he fighting against? Or who's he wrestling against?
Dean Ambrose, a Cincinnati native.
I'll go with Dean Ambrose.
Probably another good choice there. John Cena against AJ Styles.
I'm assuming John Cena still has some pull in that organization. Getting up there in the card. Yeah, I'll go with John Cena.
I'll have you know, Jimmy Van put me up to this, by the way.
Jimmy.
Because I gotta get UFC result or UFC predictions from Vince Russo tomorrow. And if you think that this is rough, he doesn't know one of those people. Not a one. What else do we have? We have Finn Balor against Seth Rollins in the co-main event of the show for the Universal Championship.
Seth Rollins versus
Finn Balor.
Seth Rollins.
And finally, at least one guy you know, Brock Lesnar against Randy Orton, the son of Bob Orton, if you know him.
I've seen Cowboy Bob Orton compete many times as Roddy Piper's bodyguard. Oh, yeah. I go way back with those two. I'll go with Lesnar.
I got to be honest. Your picks are looking pretty damn good. And see, I knew it was going to be more. It was going to be worse for you because I'm only getting staff picks for like 5 UFC 202 fights. I will say this: as somebody pointed out on Twitter, this card is really a victim of conflicting interests of the UFC platforms, UFC Fight Pass, FS1, and pay-per-view. Because if you throw Garbrandt, Mizugaki, and Magny versus Lorenz Larkin on that pay-per-view card, I think that's one stacked pay-per-view card because those are 2 fights that belong on a pay-per-view, Joe.
Absolutely, and that was the piece that I fired off yesterday, just talking about the byproduct of the business model of the UFC. And you take a look at how they structure their cards right now. It is very strategic in what they have there. I mean, Magny and Lorenz Larkin are there for basically the hardcore fans. They're going to drive people to UFC Fight Pass. Garbrandt with Dominic Cruz talking all that trash about him, basically calling him out against Mizugaki, who Cruz smashed, and Garbrandt pulls that off. He might have a title shot, believe it or not. And of course, you look at the rest of that pay-per-view; it's very, very strategic in how they place those fights.
So here's my idea, and I may ruffle some feathers. I'd put Randa Marcos versus Courtney Casey on Fight Pass to get all those really weird people who only watch women's MMA. You know who those people are, Joe. You've seen those weirdos that'll talk about like some turd Amy fighters, but when Ronda Rousey's fighting, they don't really care that much, because a lot of these female fighters are very, very accessible, and anybody thinks that supporting them, they're buddies for life and all that stuff. I'm putting Randa Marcos headlining that UFC Fight Pass prelim. Get some of those creepos to order that Fight Pass platform, because I think Neil Magny versus Lorenz Larkin should be on that main or that pay-per-view. Poor Neil Magny. What's the guy got to do? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 10 of his last 11 fights he has won. 10 of 11. Unbelievable, that guy.
The only thing that I can say about Neil Magny that I guess constructive criticism is that this guy's won so many fights, but for some reason isn't resonating with the mainstream audience. What does he have to do? He's got to do something to get out there, because when you have that many wins, you should have already fought for the title 3 times, twice. Conor McGregor did it. Conor McGregor, he was beating guys, but at the same time, he was just making a mockery anytime a microphone or a camera was placed in his face. And, Conor McGregor is that example. Chael Sonnen was fighting just like Neil Magny was for the longest time, until one day he just woke up. And at a press conference, I think it was when he may have beaten Okami, I think that was the first time he was supposed to fight the winner of Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort, and Anderson and Vitor didn't fight for quite some time after that. But that was the time when a question was asked to him. I don't know if it was myself or Kevin Ioli, actually, that may have asked the question, but we asked, who would you rather fight? Or, who do you think you're going to fight next, Anderson Silva or Vitor Belfort? And it was the first time we got our sense of Chael Sonnen when Chael Sonnen said, well, I'd rather go with the easy fight, Anderson Silva. When Anderson Silva was in his prime as an absolute destroyer. And that's when we were kind of like, what did he just say? And that's when he went on that tirade. That's something, not that Neil Magny's that type of guy, but he started raising awareness of himself, and then bang, next thing you know, Sonnen was getting title fight after he fought, 3 times for a UFC title?
Yeah. Not only that, in 2014, Magny tied the record for most wins in a calendar year with 5. 2015, in the first 5 months of the year, he had 2 performances of the nights with 2 finishes. Then later that year, he beat Kelvin Gastelum, a highly touted prospect, in a fight of the night. Then his next fight knocked Hector Lombard dead. So I don't know what this guy's got to do. Who you picking, Lorenz Larkin or Neil Magny?
Solid fight, but I'll go with Neil Magny.
I will too. I'm a fan of Neil Magny. We have Randa Marcos, Courtney Casey. This seems like a fight that, which we always say this, seems like a fight for Randa Marcos, but you never know, especially in this division where there's still a lot of settling to be done. What do you think of this fight?
I'll go with Randa Marcos in this fight. I think this is the fight that you and I would call that confidence-boosting fight, bring back the fighter's confidence. This could be it here, but especially with the last Titan FC 40 card that I called with Kamaru Usman, there was something in the water in Miami that night that had all these underdogs and debuting fighters winning these fights. So I'm kind of, maybe it is Courtney Casey, but I'll go with Randa Marcos. I think she's been there. She's done it. She's went to the Ultimate Fighter. She's been in those big lights before, and she still can keep herself relevant with the victory here. If she doesn't win, oh boy, not good for the Canadian.
Interesting matchmaking here. Colby Covington has won 4 of his 5 UFC fights, facing Max Griffin, who has never fought in the UFC before.
I don't know what to say about this fight. I was just like, okay. I mean, there's obviously some sort of situation that came about. Injury, I think it was. But other than that, I'd go with Colby for sure.
And I'm still like, this brings me back, and I hate to sound like a broken record, even if it's injury. What's Gerald Harris got to do to get back in the UFC? What's he got to do? What's he got to do? How is Artem Lobov, I don't know how to pronounce his name, still in the UFC? He is 11-12, 11-12-1 with a no contest, and has lost 2 straight fights, has never won in the UFC. This is weird.
It's strange. It's definitely strange, but all we got to say is the Conor McGregor factor, right? It's just, please, he's going to be my training partner, put him on the card. He's done so much for me and all this stuff like that. It could be anything, but I'm going to just throw a curve and just say, you know what? It's the Conor McGregor factor.
Raquel Pennington has won 3 of her last 4 fights. Went to a split decision with Holly Holm. Split decision against Jessica Andrade. With a couple different judges, she could be riding a 6-fight winning streak. Like, she's very close to never having lost in the UFC. She takes on Elizabeth Phillips. Her last win was, gosh, I think she hasn't fought in a year. Her last win was Jessamine Duke. I got to go with Pennington here. Who you taking?
Normally, I would have gone with Phillips, but Pennington, in those fights has proven otherwise that, she doesn't go away. She just doesn't go away. And despite the fact that, Phillips is 29 years old, you got to figure that, when you're taking on someone like Raquel, who's got a bit more mileage on her body, it could be different. But Raquel's only 27. She's only 27. And like you said, she sticks around in those fights. I'll go with Raquel.
Cody Garbrandt looking to get a bantamweight title shot, hopefully with a win over Takeya Mizugaki. Mizugaki is a guy who has been all too happy to spoil fights that are supposed to be quote-unquote easy in the past. Most notably, not necessarily spoiling it, but Miguel Torres. A lot of people didn't think that fight was going to go the way that it did, and it was just one of the best fights, I think, all year. Not the most consistent of fighters, Mizugaki. He did have a great run between 2012 and 2014, but Cody Garbrandt really showed something against who was it? Barao?
Almeida.
Almeida. You think he's going to earn that title shot if he wins Saturday night?
To be honest with you, Sean, when you take a look at Mizugaki's record and you look at the elite talent that he's competed against, you would have to say Cody Garbrandt is not going to win this fight. He's just not going to do it, despite what he did to Thomas Almeida. But he's 9-0. Is he 9-0? I think he's 9-0. And the fact that he did do that to Thomas Almeida in the first round could have many people believing, wait a second, this could be something super special here. I'm going to lean towards Mizugaki. And it's not that I'm not convinced about Cody Garbrandt just yet, but I'm going to favor experience right now over the undefeated fighter, which sounds very, very strange. Anything can happen in mixed martial arts. We already know that. And let's be honest, it's a pick'em fight. Cody wins this fight, it will not surprise me. But I'm just going to lean towards experience for now in this fight here.
Hyun Yu Lim versus Mike Perry. Not a lot of striking defense here. And I think the UFC knew as much when they put this on the pay-per-view card. Any thoughts one way or another about this fight?
It's not going to go 15 minutes. I can't see this thing going for 15 minutes. I'll go with Lim to pull this one off.
Me too. Tim Means, and you're going to have to pronounce this guy's name, and I know that you know it because I'm pretty sure you called his fights. What's his name?
Sabah Homasi.
How do you think that one's panning out?
Well, Sabah hasn't taken it on a full camp, but he looked fantastic, or somewhat fantastic, in his last bout there, despite his opponent literally having about 24 hours notice to come in there. But Sabah's a character, man. Good dude. Funny as all hell. But Tim Means is a bad, bad man. Now, Tim, again, hasn't competed since December. That was a victory over John Howard, KO punch there. Interesting. You know
really
what?
Benefited from that 10 months away from the UFC. He did those 2 fights in Legacy, came back, and he has looked great ever since then.
I'm going to go with Sabah. I'm going to go with Sabah Homasi. Just because he's fresher, and hopefully the fact that he's now signed with the Big Show doesn't get to him and stresses him out. But I'll go with Sabah Homasi to pull off that upset.
A fight that is going completely under the radar, Rick Story, Donald Cerrone. I don't remember a Donald Cerrone fight where we have seen so little of Donald Cerrone. I hope he has not been in some sort of parasailing accident, because that's the only reason I can think of, besides 2 guys chucking water bottles around all day. Rick Story won 3 in a row, 4 of his last 5. Donald Cerrone looked really, really good against Patrick Cote. And this is a guy who, crazy to think, let's see, won 10 of his last 11, Donald Cerrone. Who's taking this one?
I'm going to go Cowboy. I'll go with Cowboy Cerrone this one here. And he's already in Vegas. He's already been to Lake Mead. He's ridden his motorcycle down the strip a couple times. He's in Vegas, so we know he's there, and he's doing his thing. And, as long as he takes Rick's story seriously, he should emerge victorious. He'll take him seriously.
One of the biggest non-title light heavyweight fights I can remember in recent years. Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Glover Teixeira. Glover looked, after he lost to Jon Jones, then he lost to Phil Davis, and a lot of people questioned him after that. They questioned because he is up there in years. He's 36 years old. A lot of people wondered if he was maybe at the end of his rope. He fought Ovince St. Preux, won a fight of the night. One fight of the night in that one. TKO'd Patrick Cummins, which, as we've learned, the game plan to beating Patrick Cummins is touch Patrick Cummins' face, and that's generally how it works out. Rashad Evans, definitely past his prime, but Anthony Rumble Johnson is the kind of guy, it doesn't matter what weight class you're at, and I really mean doesn't matter what weight class you're at, from 125 up to 265, he hits you, you might go to sleep. What are your thoughts on this fight? Personally, I'm going with Rumble Johnson.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Rumble as well, only because he's got the speed factor. He does have the power factor, but Glover's a vet, man. He's been around. If Glover can't take Rumble down and control him against the cage, control the clinch, and if he can't take him down to the ground where he can keep Anthony on his back, I hate to say it, like DC did, he could be in big trouble. I'm going to go with Rumble in this fight here, unless Glover does that.
It is psychotic to think that Anthony Johnson fought at 170 pounds. Absolutely psychotic. And then a couple of years later, he went up and beat a guy who right now is ranked number 6 in the UFC heavyweight division. Crazy to think. Also, I want to mention this, right? We have to wrap it up, obviously, in a few minutes. Rumble Johnson says he doesn't want to fight till he's 35 years old. That leaves him about 2 years left. What do you think about that?
Win this fight, get your title shot, try and win that one, defend it a couple times, call it a career.
Sure. The big one, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor says if he wins, there will be a trilogy fight eventually. You think it's going to play out like the first 6-7 minutes, or do you think it'll play out like the last couple of minutes in their first fight at UFC 196? Or maybe something completely different?
Yeah, this is one of those fights or situations where you have this, like, I've got this weird sort of MMA crystal ball vision where I think we're going to see a trilogy fight. I think we're actually going to see it. I think Conor McGregor, some way, somehow, is going to pull this off. It's going to be absolute insanity in that arena. I think he's able to pull this off and then leave Nate Diaz hanging for a very long time when he returns to 145 pounds and defends that title once, gets into a fight with the UFC, comes back at 155, tries to win that title, and then Diaz is still trying to compete and blah, blah, and then they lure him back for that big trilogy bout. But I think Conor McGregor is going to pull this off.
As do I. I think that Conor McGregor is going to get it done. I think he sees – I mean, you go back and watch that fight, and it wasn't domination the way that Conor McGregor likes to say it was domination, or the UFC paints it in their subsequent documentaries. Nate Diaz was landing his fair share of shots, and Conor McGregor's striking was a little unlike it usually is. So often he's so balanced, and like Amisha Tate actually talked about how good he is about that and how a little off he seemed that night. He was throwing his back foot off the ground when he would throw punches, like a lot of things that you learn your first week not to do. And he was expecting Nate Diaz to crumble after one punch. It didn't happen. I'm so excited for this weekend, Joe. I know you're not up on the pro wrestling. Friday night, we have Ring of Honor, Death Before Dishonor. We have a live viewing party on Fightful.com. Saturday night from 8 to 10, NXT TakeOver back to Brooklyn. Viewing party for that as well. Of course, UFC 202. Then Sunday night, WWE SummerSlam. We have podcasts Saturday and Sunday night. Also, tomorrow afternoon, me and Vince Russo. Go register for the site at Fightful.com. absolutely free to get access to that, early access to that. Otherwise, you got to wait 4 or 5 days. Our last podcast is up, though, on the YouTube page, so check that out. And subscribe to us, as always. Joe, anything to tell these people before we go? Or actually, before you go, I'm going to stick around and talk about Paige and Del Rio a little bit.
I was going to say, I don't think you're going anywhere. No, I'm just super excited. And to be honest with you, I mean, what's going to happen tomorrow between these two? What's going to happen on Friday at the weigh-ins between Diaz and McGregor? And then we still have the fight on Saturday night. So that's really what I'm thinking. I'm going to be, paying very close attention to social media. And, I made it clear. My wife and I discussed it. We're taking the little guy out. We're going to go out during the day on Friday and try and make it home for the weigh-ins. I don't need Sean Ross Sapp texting me. Did you see it? Did you see what happened? What's going on here? I'm going to try and be home. But, Sean, there's a 5.5-year-old that calls the shots in this house. I am 3rd of 3 on this totem pole. I will endeavor to get home as best I can. We're getting married soon, my friend, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I
disgust myself for ever having been a child. It's just, yeah. Ugh. I mean, listen, if you want to miss the weigh-ins and have me text you and say, oh, my God, McGregor cracked a Snapple bottle over Diaz's head, fine. Guys, I'm going to stick around and talk Paige and Del Rio. Bid adieu to Showdown Joe. Tell everybody to read his columns. If you don't, me and Showdown Joe will come to your house. We will kidnap your animals. Then when you come back to retrieve them, you will be brokenhearted when you realize that we have given them a far better home than you ever would have, because we will set little laptops and tablets in front of their faces so they can access Fightful.com and read Showdown Joe's columns, read Vince Russo's columns, read all their stuff, because that's the kind of caring people that we are. Animal lives do matter to us, and that's why they should be able to read Fightful.com as much as anybody else. Joe, thank you so much, my friend.
As always, a pleasure, my friend.
So, guys, Alberto Del Rio and Paige both failed wellness tests. We don't know what that means. We don't know if it means they actually failed a test, or they didn't provide a sample, or they rejected it. It is a violation of the wellness policy. There were rumors that Triple H was a little pissy at Del Rio for setting a bad example for Paige. And I had somebody say, well, do you back up on your thoughts that they should be on the same brand? No, I don't, because obviously being on different brands didn't help them very much, did it? So, yeah, I'm not on board with that. Maybe this was them acting out. You could tell that Del Rio wasn't happy when he did his first interview as a member of SmackDown. I don't like the idea of screwing with people like that. Now, maybe they have a self-destructive situation. I don't know. Paige didn't need any help being like a wild kind of person, but I don't know her personally. I don't know Del Rio personally. Maybe that's just the way she acts on camera. I don't know the people. So it's hard for me to say, well, they're bad for each other. Well, they're this. Well, they're that. I don't know the people personally. If this were a couple of people that I do know, then I'd be able to make that assessment. But and people saying they're junkies, no, we don't know that they're junkies. We don't know shit about the situation, because all we know is that they had a wellness violation. That could mean a whole lot of things. Neither were set for SummerSlam. Del Rio has an out clause in his contract for next month, which he may be taking. And as Jeff Hawkins said, I think it was, they should try to swing a trade. Prince Puma, who has already filmed all of his stuff for his contract in Lucha Underground, for Alberto El Patron. That helps out both wrestlers, both promotions. I would do that in a heartbeat. And you know what? Maybe Lucha Underground would too, because why not? They're not going to have Ricochet on programming as Prince Puma anyway in WWE. They'll have him on there as Ricochet. It won't affect their programming at all. So yeah, the Paige Del Rio thing, interesting to say the least. We had the most wellness violations this year in WWE than any year since 2011, I think. So that's not good. That's definitely not good. But, yeah, people are saying he's a bad influence on her. Maybe she's a bad influence on him. I don't know. I'm not privy to that sort of information. But, yeah, that's not good. And when WWE split these rosters in half, Del Rio could be gone. You had Cody Rhodes walk out. You had Ryback walk out. You had Wade Barrett, all too excited to leave. They cut Damian Sandow. Who knows what will happen with Paige? That's 6 names that aren't really top-notch level names, but they sure as hell could have used in this brand split. And that's rough. That's rough. Guys, that is it. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. Join Fightful.com. Register absolutely for free. Thumbs up this video, too, if you wouldn't mind. That helps out. Subscribe to our RSS feed. Visit Onnit.com. Actually, visit the Onnit link on our podcast page. Visit DraftBeast.com, the best in fantasy sports. I love that stuff. They have goon games where you can pick the most penalized players. They have games where you pick the worst team possible intentionally. Much harder than you would expect. So lots of cool stuff at DraftBeast.com. Share the page, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, anything like that. Let people know about it. Join in on our viewing parties. We have them for all the shows: NXT, Cruiserweight Classic, Lucha Underground, TNA, Raw, SmackDown, the Ring of Honor pay-per-view Friday, NXT and UFC Saturday, SummerSlam Sunday. All kinds of cool stuff. I want to thank you guys so much for sticking around, hanging out with me. Until tomorrow afternoon with Vince Russo. Got to register to get that early access, guys. Until then, I am out.